What women want when they test men. How to decode female behaviour. Pass a woman's tests and attract women through authenticity, by Bruce Bryans. The book was found in the public domain, public access. No copyright infringement was intentional, and we bring it to all to this video for educational purposes alone. The introduction. Let's imagine three men, if you will, Richard, Mark and David. Richard has no problem attracting women, but he can't seem to manage a successful relationship to save his life. He would ultimately walk away from a relationship if a girlfriend became moody or unreasonable. Richard figures that the women he meets are all the same, too demanding, nagging, emotional and disrespectful. He becomes completely intolerant of the irrational nature of female behaviour and decides to keep his relationships with women light and non-committal. He'd rather be single than deal with the mysterious wiles of a woman in a more intimate relationship. Richard is convinced that he's meant to be a perpetual bachelor. Mark is a nice guy, a really nice guy. He is always there for his buddies and would do anything to make his woman happy. Anything. He even lets his wife make most, if not all, of the decisions. Mark is on his second marriage and it appears that his wife has lost all sexual attraction for him. She loves him, but she's not entirely sure she loves him enough to turn down a more attractive man. She pushes Mark around with her demands and feels compelled to hassle him for no apparent reason. Mark really wants to be a good husband, so he tries not to upset her further by being unquestionably considerate with her. He is desperate to change things, so he pursues her with spectacular gusto, meeting all of her needs, wants, wishes and wanton desires with double the effort. His wife has grown even more contemptuous of him. She starts considering divorce. David's been married to the same woman for several years and she's absolutely mad about him. David isn't the most romantic man on the planet, but he does what he can to make his wife feel beautiful, special, desired and loved. He's a straight shooter. He speaks his mind, has strong personal boundaries and doesn't care what people outside of his honour group thinks about him. He's especially honest with his wife and isn't afraid to upset her if he knows the truth will make her a better person or will improve their intimacy. When she gets overly emotional, demanding or unreasonable, David confidently weathers her storms, stands his ground and loves her passionately with a stout heart. His wife trusts him 100% and she feels secure under his leadership. And most importantly, his wife is extremely responsive to him when it comes to sex. In other words, she just can't help herself around him. Here are three different men, all of the same age and demographic, but with very different experiences with the opposite sex. What's going on here? The main difference lies in how these men think and respond to a strange and sometimes misunderstood aspect of a woman's behaviour. The subconscious need to test a man to determine his capability to lead and capacity to love her. The main difference lies in how these men think and respond to a strange and sometimes misunderstood aspect of a woman's behaviour. The subconscious need to test a man to determine his capability to lead and capacity to love her. Billions of men around the world have no idea that the women they know and love are testing them. These men go about their lives interacting with the opposite sex in absolute darkness, ignorant to the fact that they're being judged, appraised, approved and rejected based on their subconscious reactions to female testing. To make matters worse, most women have no idea that they test men either. Sure, you have some women who are so experienced in dealing with men that they know exactly how to test a man to get the results they're looking for. But for the majority of men and women, they have no idea that this sort of gender-based interaction is taking place whether they're conscious of it or not. If you had no idea what women want when they test men, you're about to take on a journey onto a road less travelled, the murkier side of feminine and masculine gender dynamics. But be warned, you cannot unlearn what you read in this book, no matter how hard you try. What women really want when they test men. Whether it's a revealing conversation or an online dating profile, if you closely observe the language women use, you'll find that they want to be with a man who can confidently take the lead and make decisions, has strong personal boundaries, and knows how to love her like a man. While different women want very different things, there seems to be at least one particular need that pops up consistently. Women usually communicate this need in vague language that some men find confusing. This happens because when women do confess this need, it appears counterintuitive to how most men were brought up to interact with women. For example, here's a small sampling of confessions women have made that men have come across at one point or another. I want a man who knows how to put me in my place. He's the only guy to ever call me out when I get out of hand. I like that he doesn't let me get away with everything. I just wish he'd stand up to me sometimes. He's such a pushover. He just lets me do whatever I want. It's like he doesn't have a backbone. I just wish he'd do what he wants for a change. He lets me make all the decisions. He's really honest with me. I don't always like it, but I know I can trust him. A lot of men these days have difficulty accepting the truth that many women prefer to be with a man who isn't afraid to stand up to them, who challenges them, and who refuses to be pushed around when a woman, or anything else for that matter, tests him. This is especially true of women who seek a more traditional male-female gender dynamic in a romantic relationship. While some women understand this and can confidently admit that they need a man who can handle them when they lose themselves in their emotions, others aren't as aware of this desire. Unfortunately, even when they are aware, there's a chance that they might be too embarrassed to even admit it. Due to the various social constraints placed on female sexuality, women tend to conceal what they are really attracted to in men. The reality of having an overwhelming sexual attraction to a highly assertive, strong-willed, and perhaps even dominant man might make a woman feel ashamed, especially in today's highly feminized and politically correct society. It's very rare for a woman to admit that she's sexually attracted to a man who doesn't always give her what she wants, who speaks his mind, and who challenges her to be more authentic. Who should read this book? This book is for the man who wants to wear the pants and keep them on as he relates to that beautiful yet perplexing specimen we call woman. If you're a man and you adhere to the idea of taking the leadership role as you date and relate with women, you will love this book. If you're a man and you'd rather the woman you are with take the leadership role, then this book is not for you. The same goes for women. If you fancy the idea of being with a man who will confidently take the leadership role in the relationship with you, you too will love this book. On the other hand, if you believe that a woman should take the leadership role in the relationship, you will have no need for this book. If you're a woman reading this book, the author implores you to not confuse gender equality with gender uniformity. Although men and women were created equal, they are inherently different. Therefore, their natural and most preferred roles in a relationship will be different. This book focuses on helping passive, unaware or misinformed men to understand and accept these differences. If you're a guy, there's a good chance that this book will challenge your way of thinking when it comes to dating and relating with women. The author will not hold any punches, but does know that by the end of this book you will have learned something that will make you far more attractive to a high quality woman and far more skillful in dealing with her in a relationship. On the other hand, if you are a woman, there's a good chance that this book will make you re-evaluate the way you've been relating with the men in your life. Generally speaking, if you're married or in a long-term relationship and the woman you love constantly nags you, creates drama, challenges you, belittles you, or manipulates you, it's time to reinforce your personal boundaries and pass her tests. Some women would never admit to this, but what they want is a man who knows how to walk that thin line between caring, thoughtful lover and firm, assertive leader. The man who masters the art of being the perfect gentleman and strong alpha male is the ideal specimen to a quality woman. So if you've been leaning too hard on the side of the nice guy, you're about to be guided back towards balance. Prepare for a dramatic shift in your paradigm. Table of contents. Chapter 1. Accepting the ugly truth. A new way to look at female behaviour. Things are going well with the woman in your life. You really argue. You really enjoy her company. And the sparks are flying in every direction between you two. Then all of a sudden she explodes on you for something so incredibly outlandish that you can't help but wonder if you're being punked by Ashton Kutcher and his mischievous cohorts. Her emotional blow-up comes out of left field and catches you completely off guard. The more you try to explain yourself, the worse it gets. The result? She slowly descends into a full emotional meltdown, fluctuating between irrational anger and hysterical crying while you feebly attempt to apologize to her for something you're no longer sure you're innocent of. So what in the name of Davy Crockett is going on here? Well, my friend, you just failed a woman's test. It's sad to say because you probably didn't have any idea that you were actually taking one. In an attempt to restore harmony once again, you resort to endless apologies, a bouquet of "I'm sorry" flowers, and a solemn promise to make things right again, even though you didn't do anything wrong in the first place. Fail. So what's a man to do? Well, the first step is to recognize what is really going on when women behave this way, and secondly, learn how to approach these situations with the mindset of a mature, masculine man. The mature approach. Changing the way you think. It's essential that men change their paradigms when it comes to dealing with a difficult, emotional, or demanding woman. The reason? A man can only take so much emotional abuse from a woman before he eventually breaks down or loses it altogether. That breaking point may come 10 to 20 years later in a marriage, or it may come a few months into a new relationship. The fact is, being tested by a woman and not understanding what's really going on underneath the surface causes a man to experience deep-rooted feelings of anger, frustration, bitterness, and resentment, all the emotions that cause him to fall out of love and eventually despise a woman. A man may find himself extremely demoralized over time if his woman constantly tests him and he doesn't know how to respond successfully. As he fails her test, she begins to withhold her respect, support and physical affection from him. Therefore, he begins to feel unloved, misunderstood and disrespected. No matter how strong he thinks he is, over time his armor will crack until he starts feeling resentment and bitterness. Sadly, once a man's feelings of bitterness towards his woman begin to overwhelm him, he will move beyond simply despising the woman he once cared for. Instead, he'll move into the most dangerous state of all, indifference. The man who is indifferent towards his woman doesn't care what happens to her or the relationship. At this point, the poor guy has officially checked out of the relationship and is only one argument away from calling it quits. That is, of course, if his equally frustrated wife or girlfriend hasn't already initiated her own exit strategy. Unfortunately, some guys just don't know that women naturally test men. However, when they are tested, they know when they've said or done the wrong thing. It's a gut feeling men get when they know something's wrong, but they don't have a clue as to what's going on and how they can possibly fix it. It's like what Morpheus said in the film The Matrix. It feels like a splinter in your mind. You know you're failing something because she's unhappy, you're unhappy, and when you try to say or do something to fix it, things only get worse. This sort of thing happens a lot more often than men and women realize. And while it may be extremely agonizing for a woman to be with a man who constantly fails her tests, it is overwhelmingly painful for a man to feel as if nothing he does can make his woman happy. When a man interprets a woman's testiness as being mean or emotionally abusive, he will not respond in a way that leads to a harmonious solution. Instead, he habitually internalizes her tests as personal attacks, and over time, the damage to his self-esteem will be near insurmountable. Even good guys who genuinely love their wives or girlfriends can reach the point of emotional coldness where they no longer feel anything for a woman. Consider this the next time you hear of a man divorcing his wife or breaking up with his girlfriend for no apparent reason. A major factor that causes some relationships to self-destruct for no apparent reason is because of a miscommunication, where a woman tests her man hoping that he'll man up and assert himself, but instead he does the complete opposite and supplicates to her demands. The problem isn't that he's incapable of standing up for himself and standing up to her. The problem is a miscommunication due to a lack of understanding. Why every man needs to know this? Guess what? You're being tested every single day of your life. Your boss will test you, your parents will test you, your friends will test you, your co-workers will test you, your employees will test you, your children will test you, and even your dog will test you, just to see how much he can get away with before you put the smack down. The world is testing you, my friend, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. However, the best thing for you to do is to learn how to deal with it when the tests come your way. Wishing the world were different is not only foolish, but a total waste of energy. Accepting that the world can be a mean, harsh and judgmental place changes your paradigm and opens up your mind to learn how to deal with its conflicts and challenges. As you already know, women will test you whether you like it or not. Women will test your strength and they will test your devotion. As a relationship matures and you learn how to lead and love a woman in the way she requires, the test can die down. But when you lose your path, become indifferent, or your priorities shift away from her, the tests will begin and perhaps intensify. Some guys, bless their hearts, have this erroneous idea that a woman who tests them isn't worth their time. They believe that a woman should just accept them for who they are and not have to qualify them. In their skewed view of the world, they believe that by being themselves, women should have no need to test them, push their buttons or create drama. These poor chaps view the world how they wish women were instead of viewing the world as it is. Their maps don't match the territory, so the mere thought of having to deal with a woman's tests, especially since they're such wonderful, honest, nice guys, seems ridiculous. Well, if you're one of these guys, the author suggests that you never date or get into a relationship with another woman ever again, because no matter how you wish women were, you will be tested. Guys who choose to reject the concept that women are testing them have a victim mentality. For them, the reality of how women think and act towards men is too harsh, so they'd rather live a lie than embrace the truth like a man. They believe the world should bend to them rather than working on themselves to become the kind of men high-quality women can respect, love and support. It's even possible that men like this struggle with the idea of being dominant. They think being dominant is the same as being a dictator, and these limiting beliefs roadblock them from accepting all that women require from a strong, masculine man. But in reality, men who enjoy lifelong successful marriages and dating lives all have at least one thing in common. They figured out what women want in a man. Whether they learn from a mentor, a friend, a book, or through painful trial and error is irrelevant. What's most important is that they accepted the truth of what women want and they acted on that knowledge until they got the positive results they desired. But not all women test men, right? Wrong. In fact, the opposite is true. The more a woman is interested or invested in you, the more she will test you. It doesn't matter if she's your wonderful wife of 20 years or the sweet girl next door that you've been spying on. It doesn't even matter if she's considered low maintenance and supposedly drama-free. All women test men. Now, like anything related to relationships, there are no absolute absolutes. Some men may find themselves in situations in which women simply do not test them in any capacity. That's not necessarily a good thing, and here's why. The only women who won't test you at all are 1. Women who have zero romantic interest in you, and 2. Highly aggressive or experienced women who already have and prefer control over you. Women test men because they seek both love and leadership from them. Therefore, if she has no romantic or emotional interest in you, you won't be tested. And if she's not interested in a relationship dynamic in which you lead her, you probably won't be tested either. As you can see, these are situations with women that the author assumes you'd rather not get into in the first place. So aside from those two situations, any sort of romantic relationship with a woman who desires masculine leadership, the kind of woman you want, is going to be filled with tests, teasing, conflicts and challenges. Evolve or suffer. Only men who learn to embrace life's challenges will reap its sweet rewards, especially when it comes to cultivating relationships with the fairer sex. And guess what? Women don't care if you really are a nice guy who attends church regularly, has a good job, and is well liked by his friends. What she's more concerned about on a deep level, primal level, is, are you man enough to lead and love me? And the only way she can find that out is by testing you. So be a man and deserve what you want. If you choose not to learn what women want and how they test men, or you fail to figure it out on your own, you'll be doomed to a life of overwhelming challenges with women who will find themselves painfully dissatisfied with you. This is the hell on earth reserved for men who choose not to empathize with women. On the other hand, learning how to relate to a woman on this level helps you become a better, more integrated man. As you excel in this area, you'll eventually find that women's tests have little to no effect on you. And as you learn to walk the thin line between being a powerful leader and an attentive lover, you will have crossed over into unconscious competence. This happens when your awareness of female behavior is so ingrained in your subconscious that you react without thinking about it. You're no longer trying to pass your tests because you act instinctively. At this point, you're a bona fide Jedi when relating with your woman, and there's very little she, or anyone else for that matter, can do to throw you off base. You've become the powerful man she can rely on as the tests prove that your behavior is congruent to what she needs. This is all a part of the process of becoming a well-integrated, mature, masculine man. She won't need to test you as much because she knows that you get it. But when and if her insecurities do flare up, you'll be well equipped to deal with her like a man. That, my friend, is why you need to know this. Will a woman always test me? Short answer, yes. There's nothing you can do to control her tests. You cannot control when they happen and the nature in which you will experience them. That's just the way it is, so get used to the idea if you want to get along well with the opposite sex, especially in a long-term relationship or marriage. When considering the frequency and volume of a woman's test, one must consider it within the context of why she's testing. Is she testing you for fun and personal gratification, or is she testing you because she's insecure? With this question in mind, here's the rationale. The more secure a woman feels around you, the less she's going to test you in order to gain reassurance of your congruence or commitment. On the other hand, the more attraction a woman feels for you, the more she's going to test you in order to experience playful displays of your masculinity. The latter is the kind of test that you want to experience with a woman, preferably often. The former is the kind of test you probably want a whole lot less of. This is the kind of test the author will be referring to for the rest of this section. Now, from the author's personal experiences with women and for what he's observed from other men in their relationships, a woman's tests can be reduced, or the negative emotions you experience from them can be diminished. This results from one of two situations. One, you're playing your role well in your relationship. For example, you are a mature masculine man that leads and loves his woman unconditionally. Or two, she's playing her role well. For example, she is a mature feminine woman who respects and supports her man unconditionally. When both or either of these situations is not present, you may find yourself on the receiving end of the load of congruence or commitments tests that have the capacity to overwhelm you. If you're playing your role well, her experiences with you will ensure her of your leadership, loyalty, and keep her insecurities at bay to a greater extent. When she's playing her role well, she is far more likely to exercise control over her emotions and therefore submits to your masculine leadership to a greater extent. If you're not being the man she needs, you're giving her female mind an excuse to conjure up ways to either affirm or suppress her insecurities by testing you. If she's not being the supportive, submissive woman you love by respecting you unconditionally, again, her female mind starts to feel the power imbalance that will cause her to test you. If you're not playing your role and she's not playing hers, all at once, well, let's just say you're in for the ride of your life, buddy. The author mentions this only to illustrate that a man cannot avoid being tested by a woman, but he can keep those tests in check by being the man she needs. Being the man she needs ensures that her insecurities are minimized and that your capacity to lead and love her cannot be reproached. Being the man she needs also ensures that when she does test you, you are less likely to experience her tests in a negative way. Life will test you. From the moment you step out into the world, you're being tested, even more so as a man. There's nothing you can do to avoid being tested day in and day out. You'll either learn how to deal with it, or you'll find yourself constantly failing life's tests. The author states here he knows that this all sounds quite philosophical and perhaps even a bit esoteric, but believe him when he tells you that one of the most valuable qualities you can develop as a man is to learn how to remain unmoved by the various tests life throws at you. Getting a grip on your emotions and overcoming your fears will make you an unmovable rock when life throws a few storms at you. But we have to start somewhere, and what better place to start than when dealing with the opposite sex? Because the author wanted to make this book as logical and practical as possible, he's going to be blunt. He decided he'd be blunt. If you want to remain steadfast not only as you relate with women, but in other areas of your life, you must learn to embrace rejection and enjoy conflict. Read that last sentence again. You must learn to embrace the rejection and enjoy conflict. Now, the author is not saying that you need to have it hard on any time you get into a confrontation, but having the mindset that says, I can handle this, in the midst of life's challenges, will set you apart as the kind of man a woman can trust and therefore give herself to you in full. Learning not only how to deal with rejection and conflict, but actively seeking them out will harden you. Real life experience is invaluable, and there's nothing like being out in the field for yourself, testing your own mettle against the tides and turns of this thing called life. Chapter 2. Why women test men. Survival of the fittest. For most women, the act of testing men is a survival mechanism used for gaining vital information about a man's character. Because a woman craves security and a weak man poses great risk to the well-being of both her and her offspring, she's going to use various techniques, albeit unknowingly, to ensure that the man she's interested in or invested in can be counted on now and in the future. The scariest part about this kind of behaviour that guys can't seem to accept is that for women, this process happens subconsciously. Most women don't know that they're doing it, and the ones who do realise what's going on only recognise what they're doing after they've tested a man. Just as it requires a ton of self-control to not stare at a half-naked woman in your field of vision, so it is with this habit of testing for women. In the author's book, What Women Want in a Man, he stresses the point that what women really want from men is the experience of desiring and being desired by a strong, confident man. Women who exude feminine grace prefer men who lead just as well as they love. You cannot have one without the other if you want to cultivate a successful relationship with a good woman. It's this insatiable quest for balance that compels a woman to keep a man on his toes in a relationship by testing him. If a man becomes passive, a woman may instinctively challenge him in an attempt to make him assert himself. An example? Think of the husband who's been out of work for months on end. He may soon find that his wife has become less patient with him as she constantly challenges his authority in an attempt to pressure him to seek out provisions for the family. On the other hand, if a man becomes far too dominating and self-involved, a woman may provide him with just enough drama in an attempt to draw out his more compassionate, caring side. Think of the boyfriend who has grown slightly distant due to a big project at his job. He's not cheating or planning on leaving his girlfriend, but his survival mechanism kicks in and forces her to seek out reassurance. How? By throwing an emotional fit that gets his attention and compels him to prove that he's still committed to her and hasn't checked out of the relationship. Women require men to both lead and love them, and they'll put out all the stops necessary to get these needs met. What a woman gains from testing you. Short answer, a ton of information. By testing a man, a woman gains access to an unsullied source of information. that she wouldn't readily have access to if she had just asked him a few questions. What this means is that by testing, you can figure out what kind of man you really are without you having to verbalize it to her. Going this route allows her to bypass any misinformation that you may give her and get straight to the truth. When a woman tests you, you cannot hide what's inside. A quick internet search for the definition of a test reveals that a test is a procedure intended to establish the quality, performance or reliability of something, especially before it is taken into widespread use. Read that. Did you read that? That means that a woman wants to establish, determine, ascertain, etc. your quality as a man, how you will perform in certain situations in the future, and whether or not she can rely on trust you. As she does all of this covertly, under the radar, unexpectedly and under the radar, didn't we just say that, of men, so that they won't have a chance to lie to her. Let's look at it this way. If a woman meets a man and asks him, so, how much money do you make? He can lie. If she asks him, are you an exceptional lover? He can lie. If she asks him, will you treat me with respect and be a good father to our children? He can lie. If a college professor wants to know if you have learned everything you needed to know about a certain subject at the end of the semester, she can either ask you if you have learned what you were supposed to, or to avoid the risk of you lying to her, she can test you on that subject instead. Even with this college example, life is a bit unfair, because unlike a college exam, you have no idea when and sometimes how a woman is going to test you. In this game of love, a woman's tests are more like pop quizzes than an end-of-term examination. Women intrinsically understand that a man can and often will lie in order to get with a woman. So during the initial phase of getting to know you, a woman will test you in order to quickly learn a great deal about you without the risk of being misled. Additionally, an especially attractive woman doesn't have time to deal with all of the guys who may be interested in her. Because of this, she may subconsciously create a flawless system for weeding out unsuitable men who just don't get it. And once she finds a man who gets it, she's going to continue to test him until the relationship ends or he kicks the bucket, falls over and dies. On the other hand, when a woman is already in a relationship with a man, she understands that her future well-being is directly linked to the quality of the man that she's already committed to. Therefore, once in a relationship, the test will continue so that she can quickly access where she stands with him and what kind of man he is without the risk of lies and misinformation. She can't control what she craves. When it comes to relating with men, women are biologically designed by their maker to seek out love and leadership, and not necessarily in that order. These desires aren't something that a woman can consciously control. Therefore, it's all too common for her desires to get the best of her. In other words, if a woman longs for love and leadership, she's going to do whatever she can to get both of those things from a man. Some men, when first introduced to the concept that women subconsciously test them at every stage of the mating game, are usually shocked and appalled. Some even struggle with discomfort as they start to distrust women on the whole because it seems so diabolical. Being hardwired to desire a man's strength, a woman will view her significant other as being at least partially responsible for her well-being. This means that in certain situations, she expects her man to protect her even from herself. The problem here is that these days, most men don't appear to be hardwired this way at all. Due to cultural shifts, societal issues, and misinformation, men do not assume this responsibility naturally. So when they hear a woman making statements like, I need a man who can handle me, or I just wish he'd stand up to me sometimes, they appear baffled. What's worse is that when women come across these baffled fellows who just don't get it, they cannot feel nor maintain attraction to or respect for them. Weak, wavering and predatory men. Weak men are disastrous, wavering men are deceitful, and predatory men are dangerous. A woman will subconsciously test a man she doesn't know to ensure that she won't end up with such a creature. On the other hand, a woman in a relationship will also test the man she's with if she begins to feel threatened that he's turning into one of these men. If you consider the ramifications for a woman that has devoted her life to one of these types of men, you'd have far more sympathy and understanding for her necessity to test. A weak man has weak principles, weak morals, and no backbone. If she tests him properly, she'll realize that he cannot stand up to her, and therefore won't be able to stand up for her. If a man cannot stand up for himself, he won't be able to do so for others. He'll have a hell of a time getting what he wants and needs in life because he refuses to assert himself. A woman simply cannot trust a man like this. Because weak men have difficulty getting their own needs met, they won't be able to meet the needs of those dependent on them. Therefore, getting into a relationship with such a creature would put not only her life in jeopardy, but also that of her future offspring. High-quality women learn very quickly that the path to future relationship bliss is highly dependent on a man's ability to stand up for himself. A wavering man is one who does not know what he wants. He is unsure of himself and unsure of her, and often finds himself paralyzed by his indecision and indifference. A woman will test a man to see how much interest he has in her, because she instinctively knows that loving her requires a man's full devotion. A man who's only half-hearted about loving her will be easy prey for other women. No woman wants to end up in a loveless relationship. Such a thing is torture for both the man and the woman involved. Testing a man prior to the beginning of a relationship ensures a woman of the man's level of desire and passion. If he proves himself to be steadfast in his desire and persistent in his passion, it makes it easier for her to let down her guard and give her heart and more to him. Even during a relationship, she will continue to test him to ensure that his resolve to love her passionately has not dissipated over time. She may even test him to stir up the sexual tension that first existed in the beginning of the relationship, something that the author discusses later on in the book. Predatory men pose the greatest threat because, unlike the first two types of interested men, these men consciously seek to seduce women with malevolent motives. If she is sound of mind, a woman will avoid a predatory man at all costs. She wants no dealing with a man whose only intentions for her are vile or completely self-serving in nature. The men the author refers to are the abusers, physical and emotional, players, cads, rapists, and even potential murderers. A woman who finds herself being courted by a predatory man has a lot to lose if his seduction is successful. A relationship with such a man may end up in humiliation, loss of reputation, abuse, rape, and even death. Although the author dislikes being so grim and dark, we do live in a world where many women have fallen prey to the unkind and monstrous acts of such men. This is a fate that every woman wants to avoid. Hence why testing men for strength and quality of character helps them to put the odds in their favour. The games women play. A woman may test a man in many different ways to see what she can get away with, what kind of man he is and how invested he is in her. Whether you've just started dating that super hot co-worker, or you've been married to a wonderful woman for 20 years plus, or 20 plus years, some if not all of the following situations may seem familiar to you. Here are a few examples of how you might be tested. When your girlfriend blatantly flirts with other men in your presence. When your wife seems to feign sexual disinterest to make you work for it. When a woman playfully teases you and gives you a hard time. When you say or do something she doesn't like and she storms off expecting you to chase her. When she cancels a date or changes plans on you at the last minute without a clear apology or explanation. When she expects you to know what's wrong when she's upset, and she gets even more upset when you fail to use your mutant powers of telepathy to figure her out. When a woman who's clearly shown romantic interest in you fails to return your phone calls. When she asks loaded, no-win questions like, is she more attractive than me? Or do I look fat to you? When she presses you to make a cosmetic or style change because she prefers it. She nitpicks about your grooming and choice of clothes. When she gives you, do this or I'll leave you, ultimatums in order to get her own way. When she demands that you complete chores that have already been determined as her responsibility. When she insists on putting you in situations that make you extremely uncomfortable. When she blames you for her negative feelings, even though you did absolutely nothing to affect her mood. When she pouts, whines, complains or criticizes you when you do something that she doesn't approve of, when she insults or belittles you in social settings, when she responds angrily after you disapprove of something she said or did, when she habitually nags you to do things her way, when she constantly second guesses your every decision, when she acts like a manipulative, spoiled child just to see how much you'll let her get away with, when she requests you to prove your love to her when she's feeling unloved and undesirable, when she expects you to ask for her permission before you do something you want to do or engage in an activity you want to engage in, when you try too hard to make her happy and she shows you nothing but contempt and ingratitude. The author could go on and on, but he thinks you'd probably got the picture by now. A woman can test you anytime and anywhere and in many different ways. It's good to develop a sort of built-in radar for this kind of thing so that you'll know a test when it's happening. Knowing is half the battle, and in most cases getting angry or giving in when a woman tests you results in automatic failure. Consistently responding like a mature masculine man who's in control is the other half of the challenge. Why you don't want to fail these tests. As guys become privy to being tested by a woman, they may adopt the mindset that it's not their problem. They think that it shouldn't matter if they fail a woman's test or not. Who cares if they say or do the wrong thing? If you're a man in control of your own mind and you don't care what she thinks of you, it shouldn't matter if she thinks you failed your test, right? Well, the author's got news for you. For the most part, because these tests are done subconsciously, she doesn't decide logically whether or not you've passed her test. The entire process happens automatically, which means what you think of her test is inconsequential. A woman can't help but feel a sense of loss when you fail, especially if she's romantically interested or emotionally invested in you. Failure, my friend, is not an option if you want the love, respect, support and sexual interest of a good woman. She cannot help how she's wired, and she's wired to test men in order to survive. Repeatedly failing a woman's congruence test results in her losing respect for you. This inevitably causes a loss in her attraction to you. Ultimately, as a woman's respect for you and attraction to a man diminishes, so does her sexual interest in him. The author can think of few things worse than being married to a woman who has zero sexual interest in you. On the other hand, repeated failure to pass a woman's test for commitment results in a loss of relationship security on her part. This causes an overall loss of intimacy because she doesn't feel important enough to her man. When her security is threatened, a woman will ultimately withdraw her emotions from the relationship, leading again to loss of physical intimacy, and eventually her escape, breakup, divorce, etc. As you can see, no matter what you may think about these tests that women use on men, it's still vitally important to overcome them. That is, of course, if you desire a passionate, harmonious relationship with a woman. If you really like this video, this review on this book, give us a like, add your comments, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and then share this, if you want to, with all your family, friends and others, your mates, your neighbour. You may want to keep this knowledge to yourself. It's entirely up to you. But go over the video again, listen to everything we've said, read it. We'll put the link to the book, which is free, online, for you to go and have a look at. Read it over and over and over again so it sticks in the back of your mind. Okay, so you'll click, you go, wow, she's, without revealing it to her, you'll know she's testing you, right? You just know so well that she's testing you because of this book. It'll help you to realise when she actually is. Okay, so yeah, give us a like, add your comments below the video, click that link, go read this book, listen to this video again, and then go share it if you want to with all your family, friends, your mates and neighbours and so forth.